In this edition of Global Print, I'm going to talk to you about India and SAARC, which, as you know, dear viewer, is the acronym for the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It was set up in 1985 in Bangladesh. Today, all 8 countries of South Asia are its members. And I'm going to argue in this edition of Global Print why India should not come in the way of Pakistan holding a SAARC summit. Nepal last held a SAARC summit in 2014. It was Pakistan's turn in 2016. But India has since always had one problem or another, primarily that Pakistan has refused to stop cross-border terrorism. But today I'm going to argue in this edition why India should not come in the way and it should allow Pakistan to hold a SAARC summit this year. But before I do that, dear viewer, I'd like to wish all of you a very, very happy new year. We're already again in the middle of a raging COVID pandemic with the Omicron variant, but we're all hoping that this is not going to be as bad as last year. We don't know yet, of course, how things are going to pan out. Lots of modeling predictions that we've seen elsewhere, including on the Print's website. So I do urge you to read all those stories and listen to all those videos. And meanwhile, of course, mask up and stay as far away from crowds as possible. And I'm also going to make another request to you, dear viewer, which is to subscribe to The Print. It's very little money, only 159 rupees, but you will get as a subscriber several benefits that other people do not have, including special videos, special stories. So please do subscribe. It will be worth your while. Now, back to my column Global Print on the Print's website, in which I talk about how India should not come in the way of Pakistan holding a SAARC summit. And many of you have written in, have tweeted in response to the story being published, saying that only in September 2021, so only 4 or 5 months ago, I had said that SAARC is dead and that we should conduct its funeral and move on. And how come things have changed in the last 5 months? And is it that things have changed, or have I changed my mind? And asking me the reasons for my piece in the Print, my latest piece in the Print. And so I would like to thank each one of you who has tweeted, who has written in. And my response to that is, and you're absolutely right, there is a huge difference between what I said in September 2021 and January 2022. And that is exactly why I have written this piece, which is that things have moved on to such a big extent, and that yet again and once again the Indian government is considering all the options, weighing the pros and cons of whether it should, or whether Prime Minister Modi should go to Pakistan to participate in the SAARC summit or not. Now, of course, there are lots of caveats to this statement and this decision making that is currently underway. The first is that the discussion inside the government is still underway. No decision has been taken yet. And the second is that the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Arindam Bagchi, has already said that India is that there has been no change in India's position, no material change, those are his exact words, and that India will, basically implying that India is, at least for the time being and as of now, will not go to the SAARC summit. Now, Mr. Bagchi made his statements in response to the Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mehmood Qureshi's appeal last week. He was holding a press conference in Islamabad in which he said that it's high time that a SAARC summit should be held. It's been 6 years. Like I said, it's long overdue. It should have been held in 2016. The SAARC Charter says that such a summit of all the leaders of all 8 countries should be held once in 2 years. And there's another peculiar element in the SAARC Charter, which is that even if one country wants to stay out for one reason or another, then the summit will not be held. And this is what's been happening since 2016. Since the strikes across the line of control conducted by our defense forces, and we know that happened in 2016 in response to the big terror attack in Uri, in which 19 soldiers were killed. So since then, the Modi government has taken a very hard line and said that no talks with Pakistan until cross-border terrorism comes to an end. And again, in February 2019, we saw yet again when the Pulwama attack took place, in which more than 40 Indian security forces lost their lives, very unfortunately. After that were the Balakot strikes, and then the whole spiral of violence, again, of Pakistan sending infiltrators across the line of control into Jammu and Kashmir. So today, as of now, Mr. Bakshi, the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, making it very clear that no material change has taken place. And yet I am arguing, dear viewer, that India should reconsider all the options and weigh all the pros and cons before making a decision hopefully in favor of allowing the SAARC summit to be held, which means that Prime Minister Narendra Modi could go to Pakistan. Now, why am I saying that? So let's look at the reasons. The first reason is that Shah Mehmood Qureshi, when he held his conference last week in Islamabad, and he said that, that India, if it wants, it can participate virtually in a SAARC summit if it doesn't want to come to Pakistan, but that it should not come in the way of the other countries wanting to participate in such a SAARC summit. Now, listen very carefully to what Mr. Qureshi was saying. There was nowhere in his entire press conference, there was no mention of the K word, which is Kashmir. There was nothing at all about the fact or any demand at all that India should return to a pre-August 5, 2019 position, which is on the date, as you know, India revoked Article 370 and integrated Jammu and Kashmir into the Indian Union. Now, Shah Mehmood Qureshi had none of those comments to make. He did not fulminate and criticize India about the decision to abrogate or to revoke Article 370. He did not say that India should return to a pre-August 5, 2019 position, which is that Jammu and Kashmir has a special status within the Indian Union. He did not say any of those. So what was Mr. Qureshi really saying? What he was really saying is that Pakistan has come to terms with the new situation in India and in South Asia, which is that the status of Jammu and Kashmir within the Indian Union is an indisputable fact. That Pakistan has no more complaint. I mean, he did not say this, of course, publicly, but this is what he implied. The fact that he did not say anything about J&K or about the revocation of Article 370, nothing at all, not a whisper, meant that Pakistan has finally come to terms with the position that Jammu and Kashmir is an inalienable and an integral part of the Indian Union. Now, you can also argue that Shah Mehmood Qureshi, and which is what I'm arguing, is that actually Pakistan has never recognized the instrument of accession that the former Maharaja of Kashmir, Hari Singh, signed, which made Kashmir a part of the Indian Union. It was given a special status under Article 370. So since Pakistan has never recognized the accession of Jammu and Kashmir, or had recognized in 1947, so why was it grumbling so much and has been grumbling so much these last 70 odd years? Why is it that in 2019, when finally Article 370 was revoked, Pakistan got its patron, China, to speak up in the Security Council behind closed doors, mind you, and criticize what the Indians had done? So if Pakistan had never recognized J&K at all, what was its whole position about? And my argument is, my information is, that the Pakistan Army, which is a very, very powerful institution in Pakistan, as you know, it practically runs Pakistan for more than half of Pakistan's history. It has been in power in one way or another, whether behind the scenes or in front of the parda. Now, my information is that the Pakistan Army believes that the returns of Pakistan's position on J&K are getting smaller and smaller. That it has to move on from its position in Kashmir, and one of the reasons it must move on is because Pakistan's economy is in very, very poor shape. We have seen earlier this week in Washington, D.C., how the International Monetary Fund postponed a review of Pakistan's loan tranche of $1 billion dollars on Pakistan's own request. And this is because Pakistan was unable to fulfill the conditions that the IMF had set out to give this $1 billion dollar loan to Pakistan. So if Pakistan's economy, which is now characterized by a huge current account deficit, it has taken several billion dollar loans from its several friendly countries like China, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and has not been able to pay it back. Its trade and economic relationships with key countries like the US is very, very bad. It has no trade and economic relationship. In fact, it has no relationship at all with India after the August 5, 2019 event in Jammu and Kashmir. So basically, although Pakistan occupies a very important geostrategic space, which is that it's the neighbor of Afghanistan, it sits on the Arabian Sea, and it's very much sits at a very important pivot between West Asia and Southeast Asia. Despite all these advantages, Pakistan has not been able to translate some of these strategic advantages into geoeconomic terms. Although Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf has talked about this, he uses this phrase geoeconomics quite strongly. Now, Pakistan's economy today is in very poor shape, and you can read several articles about that. So the Pakistan Army making the argument that unless it makes some sort of peaceful overtures with India, it is not going to be able to get its mojo back. And this position is widely understood and widely acknowledged by the rest of the international community. For example, like I said before, after the revocation of Article 370, when China raised the issue in the UN Security Council, all the other four members, the US, Russia, Great Britain, and France, never said a word. There may have been some discussion behind closed doors. There was a very meager statement that was issued after the discussion, but nothing happened. There was absolutely no thought even of anybody exercising a veto. So in a sense, the Modi government was able to get its way in the international community, and Pakistan today recognizes that it has not been able to drum up support in the international community against Article 370's abrogation and against the Modi government. Second, the Pakistan establishment recognizes that Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, and he is a protege of the establishment, is becoming a weaker and a weaker Prime Minister, a weaker leader. And there is a lot of talk inside Pakistan that Imran Khan is losing the goodwill that he has with the Pakistani establishment. Now, we don't know where that's going to lead, because we know that Nawaz Sharif is also in exile in London. But if the Pakistani establishment is no longer looking favorably upon Imran Khan, then other things will happen. So there is a lot of fluidity in the Pakistani politics right now. And I'm arguing in my column Global Print that the Indian government, that the Modi government should take advantage of what's going on. That over the next few months, it's not as if there is going to be a SAARC summit tomorrow or next week or next month, that this whole exercise is bound to take a number of weeks and months. And over these next few weeks, that the Modi government can push its leverage through. First, keep the LOC, or the line of control, quiet as it has been in the last 1 year. And that happened as a result of back-channel talks between the two national security advisors, Ajit Doval and Mr. Moeed Yusuf of Pakistan. Now, the LOC has been more or less quiet, which means infiltration has been down. So today, if Prime Minister Modi even contemplates the idea of going to Pakistan, then then the Indian government can have several asks of the Pakistani government. The first, keeping all cross-border terrorism should come to an end, keeping the LOC quiet, restoring trade and economic relations, opening up people to people interaction between the two countries, basically trying to make the India and Pakistan relationship a more normal one. If Pakistan agrees, and of course that's a big if, but we have seen that today the Pakistani establishment, which is the army, basically, in my view and according to my information, wants a normalization of relations with Pakistan. This doesn't mean that India is no longer a primary antagonist of Pakistan, but the Pakistani establishment understands and realizes that as neighbors, that you cannot live in this situation of cold hostility for much longer. So, which is why my argument in my column Global Print that India and Pakistan should become more normal nations, that India should not come in the way of Pakistan hosting a SAARC summit this year. And of course, Pakistan must follow and fulfill several preconditions that India puts forward if it wants to participate in such a SAARC summit. So please do read my column Global Print and let me know what you think about this video. Thank you so much for watching.